So I received a comment from a viewer this week on one of my videos asking me what are some of the most underrated creatureless decks in old school. So this is my response to user S204599. There's actually three decks I like playing, which I find are very underrated in old school, that are creatureless. They're not tier 1 decks, but if you're lucky enough and the combo works, uh, they could work. They're decks that could sometimes win against better decks. And the first one would be the Turbo Stasis deck, which uses Stasis to block the game and finish off your opponent with Black Vise. And you bring back your Stasis with the Boomerang, and you just redo the loop. The second deck would be Underworld Dreams and Howling Mine, where your opponent is punished for drawing cards. And the third deck, which uses my all-time favorite card from old school, which is Chains of Mephistopheles, the legend from the enchantment from Legends that makes you discard a card before drawing a card if it's not the first card you draw in your draw step during your turn or your opponent's turn. And this card works very well with the rack. So you basically empty your opponent's hand and punish him with the rack. So it's a deck that's played. Well, there's two versions. Well, there's two versions that I play with this deck. There's the creatureless version and the version with creatures, but I tend to prefer the one without creatures. So in this video, I'll show you guys the deck tech on that deck and how I built it, my version, and might give you some ideas if ever you want to try it out. So without further ado, let's get into the deck and the whole deck basically of this deck. All right, this deck basically works with Chains of Mephistopheles. That's the whole point of the deck. And what Chain of Mephistopheles does is that besides the first card you draw in your draw step, any other card that you draw, you're forced to discard a card first before drawing. Now, if you don't have any cards in your hands, what Chain of Mephistopheles does is that instead of discarding then drawing, you just mill a card and you don't draw. So that's what happens if you have no cards in your hands. So basically, if there's a Chains of Mephistopheles in play and your opponent plays activates his JM Tome, well, he first has to discard a card and then he draws. If he plays Ancestral Recall, he first has to discard a card, then draw, then discard a card, then draw, then discard a card, then draw. So Chains of Mephistopheles doesn't stop your opponent from drawing, but stops him from getting a card advantage because he always has to discard first. Now, the second part of the card reads that if you have no cards in your hands, well, instead of drawing, you have to mill a card and not draw. So for the cards like Wheel of Fortune and Time Twister, you basically empty out your hand. Let's see, Wheel of Fortune tells you to empty out your hand and then draw 7 cards. But because you don't have cards in your hands, you have to mill 7 cards instead of drawing. So you're basically left with 0 cards in your hands. If this is on the floor and a Wheel of Fortune is played, or a Time Twister, or a Winds of Change. And that's what this deck is all about. It's about putting down Chains of Mephistopheles and all cards that make your opponent discard his hand. So for that, we'll put in 4 Winds of Change, Wheel of Fortune, and Time Twister. Now, these six cards here, if you play them when there's a chain in play, basically your opponent and yourself are left with zero cards in your hands. Now, your opponent's gonna be badly affected because you're playing with the rack, and most probably your opponent isn't. So the whole point of this deck is to bring your opponent's hand size down to zero as soon as you can, having the rack in play. Now, another card that works very well with this combo is obviously the Howling Mines. Now, Howling Mine, if there's a chains of Mephistopheles in play, will make you you'll draw your first card of the turn, then you'll discard a card with the chains before drawing the second card from Howling Mine. Now, where it gets tricky and where this really starts working well is if you have two chains in play with a Howling Mine. Well, you're going to draw your first card of the turn, but then when it's time to draw the card from the Howling Mine, both chains are going to trigger. So you're going to have to discard two cards and then draw a card. So if there's a Howling Mine in play and two chains, what really happens is draw one, discard two, and draw one. So you could see that at that point, you're never going to have more cards than what you already have in your hands. Because you're always going to draw one, discard two, and draw one. Unless your opponent finds a way to get rid of a chains or a Howling Mine with a disenchant or a tranquility or whatever card that removes this. If there's three chains in play and a Howling Mine, well, your opponent has to draw one, discard three, and draw another one. So as you could see, he's one card negative every turn. He's got one card less to the point where he reaches zero, and so do you. And that's when the rack comes in play. So these cards right here are cards that are going to deplete your opponent's hand, and you want to punish him with the rack. So this is this main strategy of the deck. These are the main cards. And what you want to do is obviously you want to add all the filler cards that work good in synergy with this, which are obviously Mind Twist in black, which is another discard card, where if you draw it early with some moxes, you could right away make your opponent discard cards, and it works well with the rack. Now there's two drawing cards in the deck, which are good for yourself, which is Ancestral Recall and Brain Geyser. So these work in two different ways. You could draw from them yourself if there's no chains in play, and obviously these are great cards to draw. But let's say you have two chains in play, you cast Ancestral Recall on your opponent, so your opponent's gonna have to discard two cards, draw one, discard two, draw one, discard two, draw one. So at the end of the Ancestral Recall, he's down three cards. So basically it's a Mind Twist of three if there's two chains. If there's three chains, he's going to have to discard his hand. Same thing with Brain Geyser. If you got two or more chains in play and you play these cards targeting your opponent, these become Mind Twists. Again, which work very well with the rack. So really, these are all discard cards if the chains of Mephistopheles is in play. Now, all of the other cards are basically resource cards, which I put in the deck. Obviously, Demonic Tutor to go grab any missing piece that you need. I've got Time Walk because why not? It's such a great card to have. Gives you an extra turn. There's no downside to this card. Worst comes to worst, you just cycle through your deck and draw another card and you get another land drop. But it also works well with Howling Mines. If your chains of Mephistopheles are not in play yet, you get to use your Howling Mines twice on the floor. Then you have, I put one copy artifact, obviously to go copy one of the artifacts that I have here, or any of the moxes or the other artifacts that I'm going to show you later. I've got a copy of Mana Short. Now, the reason why I put a copy of Mana Short is because at certain points, if you want to do your combo and you're scared that you're playing against counter spells or whatever, you want to Mana Short the guy at the end of his turn. And when it's your turn to play, you could put in your combo or Mind Twist, and your opponent basically can't do anything with this. With the all his lands tapped due to the Mana Short, and also for another reason, which I'll show you later when I get there. But there's also another reason why I put a copy of Mana Short. Then to retrieve cards back from your graveyard, obviously, these two here, which we know very well how impactful they could be in a game. Regrowth and Recall to go get any pieces that you're missing that's in the graveyard. And then we've got the other, let's say, portion of the deck, which is creature control, pest control. Your opponents are going to send creatures after you, so you're going to have to find a way to stop creatures. So you're not playing with any creatures, so you're not affected by these cards, so they only affect your opponent. Obviously, I put a copy of the Abyss to stop any critters, but it won't stop the Mishra's Factories, the Sushis, and the Triskelions in old school. So for those, we've got the Moat, which are going to stop them, plus all the other myriad of creatures. I got one copy of Maze of It to slow down creatures, and I got a land, which is the Tabernacle of Pendrel Vale, which will also stop creatures from, well, it won't stop them, but it'll slow your opponent down. So these are like all answers for creatures. And the reason why I included Mana Short in the deck is that it works very well with Tabernacle. If it's in play and your opponent's got creatures, you play Mana Short in the upkeep, and you basically tap him out for the entire turn, and you kill all of his creatures because he won't be able to pay the casting cost of the Tabernacle, so all of his creatures are going to die. Now, there's also a Chaos Orb, which is there in the deck as a response to anything, but usually I use it for creatures. And finally, Balance. No explanation needed. You clean out the board, remove all the creatures, and also you could use this as a discard card like these ones. If you could empty out your hand and you play Balance and you got nothing left in your hands, and there's a rack, well, your opponent's gonna have to discard everything and take a hit from the rack. So Balance fits very well in this deck. One last card that I have that has nothing to do with the deck, but I like to include as a second win condition. It helped me quite a few times to win, and it's the old Mighty Fireball. It's always good to have if you draw it at the end of the game, you know, for the last finisher, those 5-10 points for that major fireball, if ever you need it. And it could also wipe out a few weenies, so it could go in this section here, which is removing creatures. Fireball is pretty good against all those little weenies, those Savannah Lions, and it could help you out. So out of all these cards here, everything's pretty much very easy to play. You shouldn't have a hard time looking at all looking at all the cards you have here. Everything's pretty playable. There's only one card in the entire deck that might be harder to play, and you'll see it when I show you my lands, and it's the Moat, because it's double white. So this is the only card that I find I sometimes have trouble playing. But besides that, all of the cards here are all like 1 mana of each, except also the Brain Geyser. But I got a lot of islands. I got a lot of blue, so this is not really a problem. So when it comes to lands, obviously I got 4 volcanic islands. For blue-red, I have 4 underground sea for blue-black. Blue being the most important. Black is for this stuff here, which is also part of the combo, but is easier to play. You don't need the double. Then what I have, really for good insurance policy, we got 4 City of Brass. Um, Obviously, you take damage when you tap your City of Brass, but it really gives you the possibility of doing all of the combos fairly quickly in the game. I got 4 Badlands for red, black. So as you could see here, I got basically 12 lands of every color in red, blue, and black. Sorry, six. No, what am I saying here? Yeah, it's 12 cards of each. 12 swamps, 12 islands, and 12 mountains. Like I said, to play the important stuff, the only stuff that's not of these colors is the regrowth, the balance, and the moat. And those ones are playable with my City of Brass. And I got a Savannah, and I got a Lonely Plains, which is basically used for the sideboard, which is the disenchant. Because if your opponent plays Blood Moon, you're basically dead. So this is for your disenchant, which I have in my sideboard, but I don't have my sideboard with me right now for this deck. But I do play disenchant in the sideboard just for that reason. Obviously, you've got all of the Moxes, Lotus, Sol Ring, Jewelry, and a Felwar Stone also to go play a bit of everything to help me play the Moat, the Balance, and the Regrowth. And finally, we got Library, which most of the time I don't get to use because the chains are there, so it's going to stop me. But I still decided to include in the deck in case you get a turn number 1 in your opening hand. Usually that's a game winner. So yeah, this is basically how the deck works. The best starting hand that you could get is some sort of combo, which is chains the rack and wins a change. If you could get these 3 cards right away, you could. It's not hard to play this turn 1. If you get a Lotus or a Mox and combination lands, you could almost play this turn 1 or turn 2. But I mean, turn 1, a Lotus and a land is all you need. Let's say you get any land and a Lotus in your opening hand. You sack the Lotus for, let's say, black. You play your chains, you play your rack, and you tap your Badlands. You discard, you take the remaining 2 cards of your hand and mix them in the deck, and then mill 2 cards, and your opponent does the same thing, takes his 7 cards, puts them back in the deck, and then he mills 7, and he's at that point at 0 cards in hands. He's taking 3 points of damage right away. Obviously, he's gonna keep his cards on the consecutive turns not to take damage, so he can't put lands down, he can't play, where you could start playing. This is very, I mean, I've played this many times turn 1, it's not hard, it's not rare that you can't play this turn 1. Now, I used to play Dark Ritual, but I removed them because I noticed that sometimes the Dark Ritual just dies off at the end of the game. You draw Dark Ritual, and it's basically dead. You need it in the beginning. At the end, it doesn't have that much of an impact. So I took them out, and yeah, I mean, this is the deck. You really want to rely on putting the rack and just playing any of these cards right here when there's a chains on the floor to make your opponent discard his hand. So this deck doesn't win against the real top tier 1 decks, but it does pretty well. I mean, if the cards align themselves good and you draw good, like I've beaten the deck with this. Yes, I got lucky. The cards have to come in the right sequence, but I've beaten a lot of good decks with this stuff. But I mean, it is an underrated deck. You don't see it much in old school, but I enjoy playing this deck. It's one of the For me, it's one of the most fun decks you could play. It's such like a different deck compared to all of the regular stuff you see in old school. But yeah, it doesn't win all the time, but it's really interesting to play. So yeah, there it is. This is my response to a user S204599 that asked me what was, in my opinion, one of the most underrated decks. This is it. Creatureless decks. If you guys have any more questions or you want more deck ideas, just let me know and I'll do a video if you ask me anything in my comment section. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed it and I'll see you guys in the next Magic the Gathering old school videos. Bye bye. Have a good one.